Simon, Joe and Bobby, my confession happened during the mid-1990s when I was working as a young librarian in a large urban high school. This was before the era of Harry Potter, and encouraging teenagers to read was an uphill struggle. Therefore, I decided to try and inspire the students with a visit from an author. And aiming for the very, very best, I wrote to Jacqueline Wilson, begging her to visit our school and inject some much-needed reading enthusiasm into our apathetic teenagers. I was over the moon when she wrote back and agreed. I must stress that although hugely popular, Jacqueline had not yet reached the stratosphere of fame that she enjoys today and was, at that time, still visiting lots of schools. When I told them the news, the students were beyond excited. Computers were forgotten. Discussions about which was the best band, Oasis or Blur, because this is a coloured, period fiction here, were abandoned, and conversations about last night's episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer faded into oblivion as talk of Jacqueline Wilson's visit reached fever pitch. The day arrived. Jacqueline received the red carpet treatment and unsurprisingly had a real affinity with the students. She spent the entire morning talking to them about her writing and answering all their questions, and by lunchtime we were both ready for a break. Being a woman of the world, I was sure that Jacqueline would appreciate some quiet time away from the hustle and bustle of school, so I had booked a table at the local hostelry. I was a little concerned that Jacqueline's distinctive looks and famous name may be instantly recognisable, and I was worried that people in the pub would mob her and demand autographs. As at the pub, we were greeted by the maître d'. I've never heard of a pub with a maître d', but anyway, a rather stringy and sullen woman who showed us to our table. The menu was somewhat limited, we are talking the mid-90s here, and we ordered quiche and chips. Classic combo. The food was passable, but the conversation was a delight. Jacqueline was so friendly and relaxed, and we chatted about our mutual love of music and books. I told a few amusing anecdotes about my job and was overjoyed when Jacqueline whipped out her notebook and jotted down an idea for a story. Flushed with success, I had visions of a dedication in her next book, with special thanks to Clare, without whose help, and so on and so on. Anyway, the pub was quiet, but I did notice that a family on the next table kept shooting us looks, and I grew increasingly concerned that Jacqueline's cover had been blown. The last thing I wanted was our relaxed lunch to be interrupted by gawping autograph hunters. Go away, I thought. We ordered coffees, and then I realised that time was running out and we needed to get back to school. I brought the conversation to a close. We put on our coats and stood ready to leave. The people on the next table were still eyeing us, so I swiftly ushered Jacqueline towards the exit. I realised we'd been rumbled when I saw the maître d' behind the bar frantically waving a piece of paper at us. Really, I thought irritably, the autograph hunters get everywhere. Can they not just leave a famous author alone for 5 minutes? I bundled Jacqueline out of the pub, into the car, back to the school. I have to say that she did appear slightly nonplussed by our swift exit, but I guessed that she was simply too well-bred to comment on the annoyance of autograph hunters, and was probably really grateful that I had handled the situation with such aplomb. The afternoon session went well, and at the end of the day, a taxi arrived to whisk Jacqueline back to the station, and we parted the best of friends. However, as I was heading back to the library, our school receptionist called me over. Now, our receptionist didn't have much tolerance for librarians like me and thought book weeks were a complete waste of time, so I have to say that her tone of voice was bordering on triumphant. The manager of the Red Lion has phoned. She said you had quiche and chips twice and 2 coffees, and she wants to know when you're actually going to pay the bill. Well, I was horror-stricken. That waving piece of paper, Jacqueline's puzzlement when we raced out of the pub, it was all to do with the fact I hadn't paid the bill. My hopes of a dedication in the next book were dashed. Why would you dedicate a book to someone who's guilty of stealing quiche and chips? Therefore, I asked forgiveness not from the publican who received full payment and a red-faced apology the following day, not from the nosy family on the next table who clearly hadn't registered Jacqueline Wilson and were probably mildly confused by our speedy exit, but I would like to seek forgiveness from Jacqueline herself for being such a gauche, star-struck and overzealous young librarian, and if she's listening, I'm still waiting for that dedication. Well, it's a very interesting tale, and you can see how, Claire's very excited. I've said before, I think school librarians run the universe, and she's clearly thinking, this is how I can get things to work in my favour. All went very well, apart from the fact that she didn't pay the bill. Anyway, Jo goes first.
Well, as a librarian, I'm not myself a librarian, but as Claire being a librarian, I can imagine just how starstruck she was by meeting Jacqueline Wilson, who's a very wonderful person. But I'm obviously a little bit protective. It goes on quite a lot about the autograph hunters and trying to protect her from the autograph hunters. Mm-hmm. But the fact that she did take her out to a pub and treated her to quiche and chips, which is such a wonderful meal. I mean, the meal of kings and queens, I think. I think I'd forgive her just for getting in a little bit of a state because she's kind of flustered and she really, really loved Jacqueline Wilson and obviously just left in a hurry.
We'll have to mention quiche and chips to the Bosch boys, see if they can do it.
I love quiche and chips.
I'm sure they can do a vegan quiche. I'm sure they can, yeah. Anyway, Bobby, what do you say to Claire?
First of all, beans always with the quiche and chips. Anyway, moving on.
What, baked beans?
Always hot baked beans, cold quiche and hot chips.
Yep,
there you go. Can I forgive this? I think so. What I really love about Claire is you just made an effort. You know, you got an author in, and the only thing I do think, though, is if Jacqueline hadn't hit the heady heights, she might have liked to have signed the autograph. You didn't need to be so protective. Maybe she liked the attention, but I think it's really easy, really, really, really easy to forgive you.
Yes.
This time.
Okay, so let's go back to the thing. Claire says, I would like to see forgiveness from Jacqueline herself for being such a gauche, starstruck, overzealous young librarian, and if she's listening, I'm still waiting for that dedication. Are you listening, Jacqueline Wilson?
I am, Simon. I am listening and chuckling away.
Hey! It's Dame Jacqueline, and she's back on radio too. So you did hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of school visits. I don't suppose you remember this one.
Well, I must admit there were quite a few similar occasions, but Claire, I love all school librarians, and I think you've always done a fantastic job. And I think you sound an absolute sweetheart, and you were trying so hard. I actually, truly don't mind signing autographs, but I'm so touched that you wanted to protect me, and also how lovely to have quiche and chips in the pub rather than some of those weird school meals on odd days, just like prison food. So I forgive you 100%. Okay.
And just the thing about the notebook that you took out, is that something that you do regularly? Because she's still hoping to either be in a story or actually get a mention somewhere.
Well, just occasionally if somebody tells me something really amusing, I might say, look, do you mind if I jot that down? Truthfully, I have no idea what it was. But if Claire can recognise anything in any of my books that I've written since the 1990s, maybe she does need a dedication.
I actually need to ask forgiveness of my daughter, Coco, who's 9 years old, because when Jacqueline Wilson very kindly came on my show as part of the Nation's Favourites, I forgot to tell her that I got Jacqueline on the show, and we were going through her bookshelf the other day, and I'd got loads of your books, Jacqueline, and I said, oh yeah, and she was on my show a little while ago, and Coco just looked at me and was like, how did you not tell me she was coming in to talk to you? So I need to ask forgiveness of Coco.
Well, I promise the next time we meet up, I'll find, Coco can even bring all her books in. I'll find the lot.
Yeah.
Thank you. That? You're lovely.
And I have to add, just to make things worse for you, Joe, I have a photograph. My daughter loved Jacqueline Wilson as well, and I have a photograph of Natasha, Jacqueline Wilson and Mallory Blackman, who was also in the same photograph. So you just pass that on to Coco. I'm sure that'll make her feel an awful lot better.
Thanks a bunch.
Jacqueline, lovely to talk to you. When's your next book out?
I've had a book out in May, Rose Rivers, but if I could mention a brilliant adaptation of a book called Double Act, which is on at the Polka Theatre at the moment, smashing outing for a summer holiday treat. How about that?
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. There's Jacqueline Wilson adding some extra forgiveness for Claire.